Your brain is running an operating system built for survival, not for building wealth. Every dollar you spend, save, or panic over gets filtered through instincts formed thousands of years ago, long before bank accounts existed. That's not a metaphor, it's neuroscience. And in the next few minutes, you'll see the 7 specific ways this ancient wiring is quietly working against your bank balance, starting right now. Long before paychecks and credit cards existed, the brain solved a simpler problem: staying alive long enough to reproduce. It rewarded anything that felt safe or immediately satisfying, and punished anything uncertain or delayed. That system worked fine for thousands of years of hunting, gathering, and avoiding predators. Money didn't exist when this wiring formed, so the brain never developed an instinct for saving or investing. A smoke detector doesn't know the difference between a house fire and burnt toast. It reacts. Your brain treats a market dip the same way, sounding an alarm whether the threat is real or not. That mismatch between ancient wiring and modern money creates a kind of self-sabotage that rarely announces itself. It shows up in smaller, everyday choices that feel harmless in the moment, but add up over a lifetime. One of the clearest examples starts with something as simple as a purchase. Sabotage number 1: spending money to look successful instead of to become successful. Somewhere between paycheck and receipt, a signal gets sent that has nothing to do with math. A new car, a designer bag, a bigger apartment. These purchases speak a language of status, and the brain listens closely, because for most of human history, social standing determines survival itself. A software developer earning a solid salary can still feel poor next to a coworker leasing a luxury sedan, even if that coworker is drowning in payments behind closed doors. Nobody posts a photo of their credit card statement. The comparison only ever runs one direction, and it's always rigged. This is spending built on an audience, not on a plan. Every dollar aimed at looking successful is a dollar that isn't building the kind of wealth nobody can see.
Sabotage number 2: chasing shortcuts that promise wealth overnight. Patience is expensive to the brain, and shortcuts feel like a discount. The promise of doubling your money in a month taps directly into the same reward circuitry that lights up at a casino. It doesn't ask you to think, it asks you to hope. A garden doesn't grow faster because someone keeps digging up the seeds to check on the roots.
Yet that's exactly what chasing quick wins does to real financial growth, pulling money out of steady, boring strategies and dropping it into whatever promises results by next month. The soil never gets the chance to do its work. Almost every fast track to wealth quietly becomes a fast track to loss because the odds were never actually in anyone's favor. But losing money isn't the only way the brain sabotages itself. Sabotage number 3: letting fear make decisions that logic never would. Fear and greed sit on opposite ends of the same nervous system, and fear usually wins because avoiding pain feels more urgent than chasing gain. The brain treats a 15% drop in a retirement account the same way it treats a car swerving into your lane, as an emergency requiring an immediate reaction. Some people never invest at all, keeping their savings in a checking account earning almost nothing, because the fear of losing money outweighs the frustration of watching it slowly lose value to inflation instead. Others do the opposite, selling everything the moment the market turns red, locking in a loss that time alone would have erased. Neither reaction is really about the money. It's about a brain trying to protect itself from a threat that isn't actually there. Sabotage number 4: mistaking a high income for actual wealth. A big paycheck feels like proof of success, and the brain treats that number on a pay stub as the final scoreboard. But income is just water flowing into a bucket. What matters is whether the bucket has a hole in the bottom. A dentist earning a 6-figure salary can spend every last dollar on a leased car, a large mortgage, and dinners out several nights a week, ending each month with nothing left over. Meanwhile, someone earning a fraction of that income, living well below their means, builds a portfolio that keeps growing year after year simply because their bucket never leaked in the first place. Wealth was never about how much flows in. It's about how much stays, and confusing the two is exactly why some of the highest earners quietly end up broke. Sabotage number 5: choosing the reward you can feel today over the one you'll only see years from now. The brain releases a small hit of pleasure the instant a purchase is made, long before it registers whether that purchase was actually a good decision. A future retirement account can't compete with that feeling because it doesn't exist yet. not in any way the brain can sense. Standing in a checkout line, it's easy to justify one more impulse buy as harmless, a small treat that surely won't matter in the long run. But stack that decision up hundreds of times over a decade, and those small treats become the real reason a retirement account looks thinner than it should, one receipt at a time. If gratification now always wins, what happens to everything you were supposed to build later? Sabotage number 6. Measuring your progress against a scoreboard you never agreed to play on. Social comparison convinces people they're falling behind, even when their own numbers are perfectly healthy. The brain didn't evolve in a world of curated vacation photos and new car posts. It evolved in small tribes where seeing what others had actually mattered for survival, so it still pays close attention to every signal around it. A teacher who's been steadily maxing out a retirement account for years can still feel like a failure scrolling through a friend's beach photos, with no idea that friend financed the trip on 3 different credit cards and is still paying it off. The scoreboard everyone compares themselves to only ever shows the highlights, never the balance sheet sitting quietly behind them. Chasing someone else's highlight reel is how disciplined people end up making undisciplined decisions. Sabotage number 7. Giving up right before patience was about to pay off. Wealth building doesn't look like much for a long time. No fireworks, no milestones, just a number that creeps up slowly in the background, while everything else in life feels more urgent and more immediate. That lack of excitement is exactly why so many people quit long before the real results ever show up. A tree planted today won't provide shade for years, and checking on it daily won't speed that up. It just makes the wait feel longer than it actually is. Compound growth works the same way, doing almost nothing visible for a long stretch before the curve finally bends upward. Most people abandon their strategy during that flat, uneventful stretch, right as the real growth was about to begin. That's simply not lasting long enough to see the payoff. None of these 7 habits started in adulthood. They started years earlier, in conversations that may not have even felt like lessons at the time. A household where money was only ever discussed in hushed, tense tones teaches a very different relationship with money than one where it was never mentioned at all. Someone who grew up watching a parent count exact change at the grocery store, calculating every purchase down to the penny, often carries that same vigilance into adulthood, even once the paycheck no longer requires it. Someone who grew up around unpredictable spending, feast one month, scarcity the next, often swings between the two extremes without recognizing the pattern repeating itself. These early experiences don't disappear with age, they just get quieter, running in the background of every financial decision made decades later, disguised as personal preference instead of inherited behavior. Money never means the same thing to 2 different people, because the meaning was assigned long before either of them earned a single paycheck. Some people were raised watching every dollar get set aside for a rainy day that always felt like it was coming. For them, money means safety, a buffer between themselves and disaster. Others were raised watching money spent as proof of taste, of success, of having made it further than where they started. For them, money means status, a way to be seen and taken seriously by the people around them. Neither view is wrong, and neither person chose it consciously. A compass doesn't care which direction it points, it just keeps pointing there until someone deliberately resets it. Recognizing which compass you inherited is the first step to actually choosing your own direction instead of just following the needle. Here's something that might not be popular to hear. Working harder isn't the answer, and it was never going to be. More hours and a bigger paycheck don't fix a brain that's still wired to spend on impulse, panic during downturns, and chase comparison instead of progress. The habits have to change first, or the income just funds bigger versions of the same mistakes. Rewiring starts small, automating savings so the decision gets made before temptation has a chance to speak up, or waiting 24 hours before any purchase over a set amount. Neither move requires willpower in the moment, because the moment of temptation has already been designed around. Real change doesn't come from motivation, which fades by Wednesday. It comes from systems that don't ask the brain to be strong at all, just consistent. Strip away every strategy, every stock pick, every app promising to optimize a portfolio, and wealth still comes down to the same short list of unglamorous behaviors. Living below what you earn, thinking in decades instead of days, staying steady when everything in the market and in the brain is screaming to react. None of these behaviors will ever trend online because there's nothing to film. Nobody posts a video of themselves quietly not buying something or leaving an investment untouched for another 10 years. The lack of drama is exactly the point, and exactly why so many people underestimate it. A librarian who saves consistently for 30 years will likely end up wealthier than a trader chasing headlines for the same 3 decades. Not because one worked harder, but because one built a system their brain could actually stick to. Getting rich was never really about how much you earn. It was always about learning to outthink a brain that's still running software built for a world without bank accounts, without credit cards, without the concept of retirement at all. Every impulse buy, every panic sell, every moment spent comparing your life to someone else's highlight reel. None of that comes from weakness. It comes from ancient wiring doing exactly what it was built to do, just in a world it was never designed for. The moment you can name what's actually driving a decision, you take back the ability to choose differently. That single shift is worth more than any stock tip or side hustle you'll ever come across. Your brain will always want comfort right now. Wealth will always require patience for later. Learning to sit in that gap again and again is where real change quietly begins. Sabotage number 8 would be watching a video like this and changing absolutely nothing tomorrow morning. If any of these 7 patterns felt uncomfortably familiar, follow the channel. There's a lot more of this coming, and this is exactly the kind of thing worth revisiting. Now here's a question for the comments. Out of everything covered today, which one of these 7 habits do you think has cost you the most?